What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Promethean Tides. I'm General. As always, I am joined by Breaker. What is going on, Breaker?
Yay, doodly doodly doo. I guess we're going to use MS Paint to draw some funny pictures for all of you. Yay.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking. I wanted to go. This is gonna be like a shorter video, but I wanted to go over an argument that I had recently, with some other guy on Discord. I get into a lot of arguments. Maybe we can get into another argument after this one. But uh, the concept was that I said that the species that is bacteria can absolutely be smarter than man, and they were like, "What? A bacteria is smarter than man? That's not true. I mean, do you think that a worm is smarter than a man?" And I said, "No, I think a man is smarter than a worm. Absolutely. Of course I do." They were like, "Well, then why do you think that bacteria is smarter than men?" I said, "No. The species of bacteria is smarter than a man." And let me explain that, right? So, when we think about humans, usually we think about the phenotype of humans. So I will just select this burgundy color, and I'll paint a little bit.
Yay, dioramas.
Okay, so that's the that's the phenotype of man. The phenotype, right? But man does not exist by himself. In fact, man is a sandwich, right? We are a sandwich. It's very important to understand that. So, under man, under our phenotype, exists our genotype, and that's the bread in the sandwich. And so this is the genotype. Okay? Now, any proper sandwich has to have another piece of bread on top. Now, for this is the memotype. Anyone who is fans of Richard Dawkins knows what this is all about. So this would be the memotype. And I know that I have excellent artistic skills. You don't need to tell me how much of a Picasso I am. I know I'm fucking brilliant at my art skills. But this
That's
is
like an incredible sandwich.
I know, it's beautiful, isn't it? So, man is a sandwich. We are the phenotype, but we exist on top of a genotype, and I guess kind of under the memotype. And together, this constructs a single organism. It's one organism, and it's I guess it's like it's like abstracted man, which I will just say is am there. So that's like abstracted man, but that's what we are fundamentally. You are not just your phenotype. Without your genotype, you die. Without your memotype, you are lost in the wilderness and you're raised by wolves and you understand nothing. Man exists in a state of these three things working together as one coherent unit. So to think of man as just the phenotype, I think, is kind of a mistake. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to bacteria, they're a little bit more like avocado toast. They're not quite a sandwich, right? So we'll go back to the bread.
Yay.
So the bread here is the genotype. However, on top of the genotype is the mushy green shit that is the bacteria. This is also the phenotype, mind you. Uh, but for the bacteria, there doesn't really appear to be a memotype on top of the sandwich. So that's why I say it's more like avocado toast. If bacteria have memes, I can't conceptualize it. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying I I haven't seen it.
The only way I could conceptualize there's certain bacteria, I think Anodophilophilus does this, where they have little like microbacterial wars, and they throw like little like chemical components at each other, like little bombs. And some bacteria will intercept the chemical bomb and block it from hitting another bacteria. So there's like a weird type of strategy with throwing these little chemicals around to attack other things. So that's kind of like a very extremely simplistic Memo type, where it's just like interfacing with chemistry.
Okay, yeah, sure. I mean, the I would say that
It's not as dynamic as ours because it's just hooked into chemistry. So there's like there's no ideology, there's no transcendence with bacteria. It's very like bare bones.
okay. Actually, I am going to put a phantom slice of bread on top. It's gray because it exists in the ether, right? And in this case, this would be plasmids. So I'm not sure why there's such a massive space between the S and the M there. I don't know. I'm doing this with my mouse. I apologize. I'm not good at this. But uh, the in it's phantom because a plasmid is a piece of genetic information, and yet it it is also a small circular piece of DNA that can be rapidly exchanged. So it's like bacteria have their own like they have like their own thing that can be rapidly traded around like a meme, but and it's like a meme. uh it doesn't insert itself into like the main, generally speaking. I mean, sometimes it does, but like, generally speaking, it won't go into like the main piece of circular DNA that is like their like main piece of DNA. The plasmid is kind of like its own like little separate thing that the bacteria sometimes expresses. So like the bacteria, like they almost kind of have a memotype, but it is still based off of DNA, even though it's a little bit different than the primary replicator of their larger DNA structure. So it has a phantom bread on top. So maybe you could consider bacteria to be a sandwich, maybe, but you could also think of it.
Yeah, and the plasmid is also constrained by like laws of chemistry, where it's like our memes we can conceptualize like grandiose, totally unrealistic things like infinity and the concept of the divine and godhood and things like this. Whereas like bacteria's plasmids, they're kind of just like chemicals. They're parts of nature that have been deftly appropriated, but their connection to nature is extremely direct. Whereas like our memes can like break out of the box
Right.
and go into like high level abstractions and mathematical concepts and stuff.
Right. The only thing that you could say about plasmids, I guess, is they're still based directly off of nature. They're still based off of DNA,
Yeah.
and what proteins that codes for. The only thing that you could say about plasmids is that they are rapidly transferable,
Yeah.
like a meme is. But that's really the only parallel, which is why it's a ghost. It's a ghost piece of bread on top. It's kind of there, but not quite
Yeah.
there. Anyway, so
There's no informational mutation. The information is encoded based on the material substrate of it.
right. So when it comes to the phenotype of man versus the phenotype of bacteria, um, uh, it's the phenotype is smarter than the phenotype of man is smarter than the phenotype of the bacteria, right? I don't know how best to illustrate this. I'm not an artist. I'm really not. It's not my forte. But like the phenotype of man is smarter than the phenotype of bacteria. If you think about a man, it's smarter than bacteria. Exchanges for a worm as well. If it's a worm, Also, worms don't really have memes, so like we could think about this in terms of worms as well. It just, for me personally, it's simpler to think about bacteria. But yeah, I mean, like, man is very smart. Um, However, you also have this interaction, say, between the phenotype of man and the genotype of bacteria.
Mm.
The genotype of bacteria is smarter than the phenotype of man, right? Um, and I'll explain this, but I also want to say that between the genotype of bacteria and the genotype of man, uh, it's a question mark, but it's
I would say in that regard, because the bacteria are a more ancient form of organism, so they kind of have like a natural selection leg up.
and they evolve more rapidly. So
Yeah.
because their generation time is shorter. So it's a question mark between which is smarter, the genotype of man and the genotype of the bacteria. But I put the question mark closer to the bacteria side because like that's where I'm like I'm guessing like if there were to be a winner, that's where it'd be. But to be fair, the genotype of man interfaces with all
Yeah.
of the complexity of man, and so it must be intelligent enough to deal with that. So it's like,
Yeah.
honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I'm leaning towards bacteria, but I could be totally wrong on which genotype is more
Well,
intelligent.
also, the genotype of man had to evolve in an environment where bacteria were like major players already and had been for billions of years. So,
Right, right. And so then also when it comes to the memotype of man, this is what allows us to do science. And our memotype, I think you have this interaction. I'm going to use another color so this doesn't get too confusing. For the memotype of man, uh, the the meme is is smarter than the phenotype, but the the genotype is smarter than the memotype, right? So basically, you have like this complex dance between man and bacteria, where if you look at like different fragments of these things, it's like and by the way, I don't even want to get into the plasmid bit here because that would be too crazy. But um, basically, when it comes to bacteria, the the genotype is smart, the phenotype is relatively dumb. And when I say relatively, I mean actually it's very intelligent. Even a single bacteria is itself a it's a complex organism with many emergent properties, many dimensions of complexity that can actively respond to its environment in a multitude of ways. Even something as simple as a bacteria is actually quite smart. Um, but on this, it is actually probably the dumbest thing here. However, uh, when you are understanding an organism, you cannot just look at purely the phenotype. You cannot look purely at the human or the bacteria. You have to look at the underlying DNA, the genotype of what produces that organism. You'll notice that the genotype it tends to evolve. It's also part of a civilization of other genotypes, right? Like within humans, we all have our own genotype. If there's 8 billion genotypes in the world, then there's 8 billion citizens within the genotype community as well as the human community. And those genotypes they're constantly exchanging information, having sex with each other. They're capable of, I guess, doing very very high level complex tasks that actually are even there are things that mankind cannot possibly comprehend. So in this, I would say between the genotype and the phenotype, which is smarter? Let me use another color. The genotype is smarter than our phenotype. Our genes are smarter than us. I am pretty confident about that. And the and again, we have to think about like what do I mean by intelligence? Because it is kind of like a vague statement. Like, well, human beings can do math and we can think about philosophy. Our genotypes can't do math and think about philosophy. That's true. That is true. But uh, what is the central issue that mankind is trying to solve? Well, it's basically how to exist within nature and I guess continue to exist within nature while making grandchildren, right? And that's a that's an issue that is at the border between it's at the no man's land between order and chaos, right? We're dealing with nothing but complex systems here. Uh, uh, so I guess that when you're dealing with, let's say, efficiency versus uh, evolution, the ability to evolve, or those are both contrasting systems like chaos and order. Um, the the genotype is much closer to that middle ground than the phenotype can possibly be. And you can say the same thing about the memotype. The phenotype is always closer to that center between order and chaos than the memotype can possibly be. Uh, so in that way, the genotype it's more stable over time. It's more able to, I guess, just understand something about the base reality of nature. I mean, you're dealing with levels of intelligence here that are they're very alien to man, but it's important to realize that man is not the only form of intelligence. There are many forms of intelligence out there. You can look at a squid. A squid is very smart, but it's very alien or an octopus or whatever. It's very alien to the human psyche. A crow is incredibly intelligent, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to the human psyche. I mean, hell, even a chimpanzee is very close to humans, and yet we have difficulty understanding them. We understand dogs better than we understand chimps, and it's probably because we evolved alongside dogs. We domesticated the shit out of dogs, but we're talking about very alien intelligences, but intelligences that nonetheless are able to probe the possible space that we can exist in, and find solutions that continue their own existence, and they do so extremely efficiently, so efficiently that the some of the best bacteria outwit some of our best scientists. This is why we have antibiotic resistant bacteria, and why they're becoming such a big problem. And also, like, I mean, we're having issues trying to figure out what the next antibiotic will be, because all the bacteria are evolving so rapidly due to the intelligence of their genotype, to be able to just flow around our technologies that like penicillin and ampicillin that kill the bacteria. So it's important to realize that there are intelligences that exist out there that are very good at problem solving, but they do not think like you. And that the specific type of intelligence that man has is not the end all and be all of all intelligence on the planet. So that's why, in some ways, a bacteria can be smarter than a man. There you have it.
And this also makes sense if you consider it's just like the human memotype, for example. Before any of us even knew that bacteria existed at all, before the germ theory of disease, we were kind of by proxy manipulating these things to serve our ends. Like, it's all been DNA controlled from the bottom up with our memes. Like when we made beer thousands of years ago, before we knew that microorganisms were actually eating and like shitting out alcohol to make beer, and that's what we were actually doing. Like, we were using these things like, hey, this certain type of yeasty powder seems to ferment things and cause this bizarre substance to arise that is very pleasant to drink. And germ theory disease has only existed for like roughly 200 years. So in all that time, like the genotype of the bacteria was always working in the background before we even knew it was a fucking thing.
Okay, so maybe we could take this opportunity to go over domestication, right? Because this is a really interesting idea, right? So, okay. Man domesticated animals, and we've done so a number of times. But the deer is in the process of domestication right now. I'm not saying that it will ever become fully domesticated, but it is in the process of doing so. And here's why, right? So let's say that you have a population of deers. I will draw them crudely.
Oh dear.
Okay. Oh dear, indeed. Okay, so these squiggles, they're brown, so of course they represent deer. Now, let's say that there is a wolf.
Snap.
The wolf is red, right? I can't draw worth shit. So, the deers. Those are the deers, and this is the wolf. Trying to draw with a mouse is a pain in the ass. Okay, so when you have a population of deers and wolf, then that's kind of like the state of nature, right? Now, let's say that mankind comes along. Mankind can be blue.
Oh snap.
Okay, so here's the thing: mankind, they can murder the wolf. Wolf is dead, and now mankind is the predator of the deers. That's supposed to be a heart. It's not a very good heart, but that's a heart. So now mankind is the predator of the deers. Now the thing is that in the state of nature, there is there's a synoidal I guess pattern of growth and bust phases, where like let's say there's a lot of deers one year. Well, in that case, there's a lot of food from the wolves. That means the wolves can have more babies. Next year, the wolves have a lot more babies. That means that all the babies kill off all the deer, and then you have a reduction in the deer population. And now there's not enough food for the wolves, and so the wolf population also goes bust. So there tends to be within nature a waveform that I'll draw here.
Yay.
Yeah, there's a waveform.
Tide goes in, tide goes out. You can't explain that. It's like the Promethean tides. Ah!
Exactly right. Yeah. So there tends to be a waveform when it comes to the population of deers and wolves. But let's say that man moves in, and wolves are kind of they don't like men, and men don't like wolves. So we kill off the wolves because we're stronger. Now we have a population of deer. What the fuck do we do with this population of deer? They're not being eaten, so their population tends to expand quite a bit. So let me just draw some more deers in here, these squiggly circles. Okay, so now you have more deer. Great. Now, when you have too many deer, they start to I guess there's a number of problems. Like you still have like kind of a boom bust cycle, because like if they eat too many plants, then they'll run out of food. Also, because you have more deers, they're at greater density. You can start having disease within the population. There's problems here. So what can man do? Well, man can actually start hunting the deer, right? And start eating the deer. And the thing about this is that, let's say that you were a deer, and that you yourself, you had to choose which organism you would rather be predated upon, because something will predate upon you no matter what. It's inevitable. Which host would you rather want if you were a deer? would you want the wolf that is liable, that is constantly having this waveform in your population? It's causing like some amount of chaos. It's possible that one year the wolf population could be so great that it completely eats your entire species within the area, therefore causing that particular population to go extinct. Do you want that, or alternatively, would you like a species that farms you, that keeps your population under control, that never eats you to the point of extinction? It just kind of, picks some of your numbers off to eat, but otherwise you have a very stable population. Well, if you had the choice between the two, as a deer, you would definitely want to live under the human. And so this is basically this is what humans did in order to domesticate animals. Basically, we represented a more stable and, in some ways, a more kind predator than what existed naturally. And so the choice from the perspective of the organism is kind of it's a no-brainer. It's like, okay, well, we go with man. And then over time, these animals, like let's say the cow or the goat or the sheep or the horse, whatever. We don't actually eat horse that much, but it doesn't matter. When it comes to domestication, these animals, they become more and more used to humans. They're not fearful of humans because, of course, they're terrified of wolves, but they're not scared of humans because we represent essentially an island of like almost a population and genetic stability for them. This makes, as a species, this makes them happy. This is a good thing. Now, of course, this actually may be the great poison of mankind, because what does mankind do once he's fully domesticated a species, made it once mankind has made a species its complete and total bitch that it can exploit endlessly? Once it gets to that level, well, then you start introducing things like factory farming, right? And actually, the animal has lost all of its freedom, and now it's just trapped in a meat grinder where we keep making it have babies, and then we keep meat grinding its babies forever. And in fact, maybe it would have been, from like the long-term perspective, it would have been better for the animal to never make the deal with the devil that is mankind. But they did make the deal, and now they're trapped, and now they're in the factory farm, and now they're in a perpetual meat grinder for forever in order to assuage the hunger of humans. And so it's very interesting that these animals arrived at this point. And I would say overall that this is further evidence that nature, I believe in the God of nature, essentially. But nature itself, it doesn't know all things. It's not omniscient, and so it can get stuck in these traps sometimes when neither nature nor the phenotype knows exactly what to do with this new thing that hasn't been encountered yet. Sometimes it ends up being a good thing. Sometimes it ends up being a bad thing. And in this case, I would say that human beings were we were almost like a Venus flytrap. We lured these species in with comfort and happiness and genetic and population stability, and then we sprung the trap, and now we eat them. We turn them into burgers and make a sandwich out of them. So that's just some interesting points about domestication.
Mm. And also with humans specifically, the type of domestication we're doing to any number of animals, up to and including ourselves, with certain interpretations.
We
and
are
arguments
also
you can make
domesticating
along those lines.
ourselves. Yeah, and
there's
humans should be concerned about that.
There's also a marked difference in like the natural way of doing this and the specifically human way, as far as we know, mind you. Because like we were talking before with the memospheres, with our memes, we're actually able to interface with more rarefied domains of ideology than what nature, for the most part, seems to ever arrive at with most other species that we're aware of. So it's like we can actually think about these things in like such raw, logical, mathematical terms. Like if we wanted to, we could like obliterate all deer everywhere trivially easily. Like we get in a fucking helicopter with a machine gun. Like deers wouldn't be around for much longer if we went that far with it.
Yeah, there are some things that we could extinct tomorrow, like the koala bear and the panda. There are other things that we've been trying for years to extinct and we just can't manage to, like the fucking mosquito.
Mosquitoes, man. Well, those freaking insects, they got a massive leg up because they're much more ancient, they're much more robust, and there's a lot more of them.
Yeah, and then
mammals are a bit more fragile than insects.
They're more specialized, in many cases. Yeah.
The general point I'm getting at is with our methodology of domestication, like because we're interfacing with this idealized form of domestication in a way that, like you alluded to before, nature doesn't really so explicitly do that. Nature, there's a lot more gaps and wiggle room with a lot of the angles, and there's those boom and bust cycles that everything has to worry about. Like our boom and bust cycle has been on a massive boom for the past 200 years that seems to have nowhere to go but up. You could make arguments that that's inevitably going to come down at some point, but right now we're in like the luxurious boom times. Like
that's true.
Everything is going right. So we look at all these domesticated things like the cows and chickens, for example, and just like we're so good at this that like globally speaking, the populations of these bovines and fowls would never get to these like ridiculous proportions. They're only elevated by proxy because we care about them.
Okay, so it's interesting that you brought that up because we're gonna, I guess maybe we can talk about the economy a little bit. Okay, so this is an exponential curve as well as I can draw it. And okay, so in this exponential curve, we basically have I think kind of like the world economy, right? Now, it always goes up. For as long as man has existed, it has always gone up. And that's like super awesome, right? But there is something that this curve is dependent on, and that's called infinite growth, right?
Oh shit.
As long as we can keep expanding the population, or expanding our technological development, or expanding the amount of resources that we have access to, then this curve can continue to go up and up and up and up and up towards infinity. And it's like really cool. It's the idea. Basically, the model by which the world economy exists upon is infinite growth. However, the thing is that nobody's quite certain if infinite growth is actually possible. In fact, I might argue that infinite growth is not a possibility. We can grow a lot, but you cannot grow infinitely. And Breaker, can you think of any other economic models that are based off of that only work on the model of infinite growth?
It wouldn't be all the freaking inflation, would it?
It's called a Ponzi scheme, right? A Ponzi scheme will continue to provide wealth and bountiful resources as long as there is an infinite growth that can occur in it. However, a Ponzi scheme eventually runs out of growth, and then it inevitably collapses. My position on the world economy is that we've essentially built a world economy off of a Ponzi scheme, and it can grow for some time, and who knows when it will collapse. But the thing is that it's not a question of if it will collapse; it's a question of when it will collapse. It will collapse. In my opinion, the entire world economy is a Ponzi scheme. It's built off of infinite growth. It's It doesn't make any sense to build a long-lasting economic structure off of infinite growth with a constantly increasing population that constantly produces new technology and that constantly has access to more resources. But that's exactly what we're doing. So we find ourselves in an interesting, I guess, time. So that's the current economy for you.
Yeah, and when the thing collapses on the other side, it's like a logarithmic fall. It's just like literally falling off a cliff. Like, no.
Yeah, I think it would look something like this. Yeah, it looks like that, like a extremely erect nipple. That's I think that's what we might be.
No.
It's what we might be looking at in the near future. Or you know what? The thing is that it's kind of impossible to predict when it'll happen. Like honestly, it might collapse in 500 years. Like we could still be like on this growth curve. We might still be here. Like it might be that it doesn't happen for 500 years, but it seems as though it is a certainty that it will collapse. But we don't. I don't know when. Maybe someone out there knows when, but I don't know when. So it's an interesting thing about the economic system that we currently live in.
Just like those freaking Beanie Babies where the values all went down. It's like, fun fact about Beanie Babies. There is one Beanie Baby that did actually retain value and went up in value because of its rarity. But it's for a very weird fucking reason. It had to do with the Princess Diana commemorative, and they made this little Beanie Baby teddy bear to commemorate Princess Diana. But only like the first several thousand of that run are actually the valuable ones, because they did something like they switched a different type of packing pellets that go inside of the Beanie Baby to a different material. And that's the only reason that first run of Princess Diana Beanie Babies are that valuable. Most of the other ones aren't, but that specific one where they switch the formula of the pellets is the only one that's actually valuable. And all the other Beanie Babies are just your shit out of luck.
I think that most Beanie Babies have like a little like plastic, like a bunch of plastic balls inside of them. I want a hefty Beanie Baby. I want like little metal balls inside of them, like that are made out of like iron or something. You know, something with heft.
Well, you'd run into a problem with iron because it would rust too much.
No, it's inside the Beanie Baby. Like you can't.
But the Beanie Baby's not an oxygen barrier. It's like felt.
It's not. But you won't be able to see inside the Beanie Baby. It's all contained. Like you wouldn't know if it was rusted or not.
But then, well, they'll fuse together and get all chunky.
Okay, fine. Yeah, maybe you would want to do it with like stainless steel or like aluminum or some sort of. I'm not a.
And then with all that fucking iron oxide, it would be a health hazard because you could get tetanus.
Tetanus. You know what? I'm not even going to go into it. Tetanus is a bacteria. Rust is iron oxide. They're not the same thing.
I know, but it grows on like rusty nails. It's always a hazard.
Yeah, but it's inside the Beanie Baby. Like you wouldn't be touching it. Okay, but this is a stupid fucking conversation.
Damn it, fucking Beanie Baby, hefty Beanie Babies. Put titanium in them. Screw it.
Actually, titanium would be incredibly expensive, but also that would be a dope ass Beanie Baby. And completely
you could do aluminum.
Completely oxidation resistant as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aluminum oxidizes, but it takes a very long time.
One more thing that I'll cover here. Okay, so I'm not certain that there should be such a thing as scientific laws.
Well, technically, the concept of law is like this handover from the Enlightenment era. It's like the pre-Enlightenment era, like everything was based in like divine laws and forms of like metaphysics. They kept the concept of law into the Enlightenment era because of its utility function, if nothing else. Like, if you want to be maximally cynical and materialistic about it, you could like have that interpretation of it.
Okay, so within mathematics, you have laws, right? And this kind of makes sense. It makes sense that within math you have laws. It's like, okay, if similar to axioms, right? It's like, okay, if uh, like a plus a equals 2a, right? That's like a mathematical law, or maybe that's an axiom. I don't know. I'm not a fucking mathematician, but within math, you have
That is an axiom. That's like the Pinot axioms.
okay. Well, somewhere within math, you have laws that are established on top of axioms, and fine, whatever. It makes sense for math to have laws, but I would ask, why is it that science has laws, right? Like I don't know. I have no idea because oh, you know what? I could just type things. Maybe that would be simpler.
Yeah, you can type in MS Paint. Use Show Card Gothic. I use an extremely obnoxious font.
Okay, not Cambria math. You're right. Maybe well, Comic Sans, of course. We gotta go with Comic Sans.
Ah, snap.
So
The only thing worse would be Papyrus.
right. So I guess that uh I'll type this out.
Yay.
Okay.
To make
So
sure your borders. There you go.
science is built off of a series of axioms, right? Now what is an axiom? An axiom is a fundamental assumption. It is an assumption that you are making about the universe. So for instance, here is an axiom of science. Reality exists, right? Now, that may seem like a like such a stupid fucking thing. Like, of course reality exists. But no, in the realm of philosophy, that's not something that you can just assume just right off the bat. For instance, what if we all exist in the Matrix, right? Like, what if we're all brains and vats that are hooked up to a computer? In that case, the reality that we are perceiving is not actually base reality. If we happen to live in the Matrix, and by the way, how would we be able to tell? In that case, well, science doesn't actually make a lot of sense. In that case, you would have like basically science would be computer science. um, but it wouldn't be
And there would be
science.
certain agents. You would run into things like Neos that could bend and break those laws, like maybe in a what would seem to be a godlike way.
Right, exactly. So, but anyway, so science is based off of a series of axioms. Here's another axiom. Assuming that objective reality exists, can you make reliable and repeatable observations upon said reality? Right. That is necessary for science to occur. If you can't make observations upon the upon the objective reality, then you can't do science in the first place. So there's a second axiom of science, right? So science is built off of axioms. It is faith based, in the same way that basically everything else is faith based. Christianity is faith based, yeah, yes, but also so is mathematics. Mathematics itself is based off of axioms that one must place faith into. In fact, I think that there's only really one system that isn't reliant on any amount of faith, and that's like the ultimate like solipsistic end of Descartes' argument, where it's like, okay, the only thing that I know is that I experience something and I end at that, and that is the only thing that I will assume. That is the only stance I believe that is not based off of any amount of faith. But of course, that leads you like if you truly believe that, and that was like you really embrace that, then you would be a crazy person, and I think that you would go schizophrenic in a minute. So it seems necessary to have faith in something in order to be a human. And I would argue that humans are born with faith in things like a faith that the world exists. It takes a lot of philosophical work to go against your instincts and start questioning the innate assumptions that you have as a biological representative of nature. But anyway, so right, so science is built off a series of axioms, right? Um,
Yay. I would say more. It has more to do with empiricism, but empiricism is a key component of the scientific methodology.
right, yeah, I mean,
Empiricism requires the de facto assumption that reality exists. Like my senses are interfacing with something that's not just me. It's not just me alone in a solipsistic vat that's projecting all of reality outside of me. There's something coming from the outside interfacing with me.
right, right. Science is not just built off of axioms; it's built off of a multi-millennia history of philosophy, right? So, like you can simplify it and say, yeah, it's built off these axioms, but those axioms come from like deep philosophical principles that we've been arguing about in the Western world for literally millennia. So the philosophy of science goes deep. And by the way, I would like to point out that most scientists don't know the first thing about the philosophy of science, which is very interesting. You would think that, if you're going to practice science, you ought to know the philosophy behind it, but I guess perhaps you ought not, because the selection parameters that currently exist seem to select for scientists that do not understand the philosophy of science, and there's a very interesting thing there. Especially given the fact that so much of science is funded by good old daddy government. But I won't get into that at this moment. But that leads us to the question:
Dawkins brought that up. It's like,
Go ahead.
Richard Dawkins brought up one time, like he has particular bugaboo with philosophers when he was like, I think it was back when he was writing The Selfish Gene. And the philosophers would say, genes aren't selfish any more than elephants are teleological. And just like, you fucking people, you're kind of just annoying. And philosophers, I've talked to a lot of philosophers, and I always get that sensation they have an internal case of head up ass syndrome.
I mean,
like they always want to be very pedantic about the definitions of every fucking thing.
I mean,
but if you consider like the selfish gene theory, that is kind of a philosophical principle.
It is a philosophical principle, and that I think that particular critique is stupid, because that's entirely semantic. It's like, dude, okay, yeah, like technically speaking, the genes are not selfish, but for all intents and purposes, as mankind understands the universe, they might as well be. So, like, shut the fuck up. There are pedantic and semantic philosophers, and then there are some intelligent philosophers. But yeah, there's some really
fucking
dumb ones.
Postmodernists are those super semantical dipshits that always want to break apart words and everything. It's like, motherfucker, can you just run with something, for the love of God?
Okay, but anyway, so in that case, what is a scientific law? Because laws exist in science. Now, math has laws, right? But science is a very different entity, right? Like it's like I think it was I forget who it was that was talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Was it Katy Perry, or was it Miley Cyrus? One of the two was talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson, and they were like, "Is math related to science?" And Neil deGrasse Tyson was like completely dumbfounded by this question, and a lot of people were like, "What do you mean is math related to science? Of course, math is related to science. What the fuck?" But actually, probably inadvertently, that was a very deep question. Is math related to science? And there is some relationship, but they're, philosophically speaking, they're not. It's not like they're close, right? They're used together a lot because for whatever reason, it seems as though in order to understand this world, we must embrace order and chaos in order to achieve complexity. And in the same way, we must embrace both Aristotle and Plato in order to understand things. As much as I hate Plato, I recognize this as being true. So, like, no, science and math are actually not that closely related scientifically. Philosophically speaking, but they're very good tools that can be used in conjunction with one another. But point being, laws in math actually make a lot of sense. But what is a scientific law? Well, okay, here's a scientific law. Gravity. Gravity is a scientific law, right? Uh, but why? Right? You may ask yourself, why is this a law? Also, why is it that we call anything in science a law? Because theoretically, all things in science ought be questionable. That's the entire that's the entire notion of science, that all things are
Technically,
questionable.
there are a lot of people to this day still fighting over what exactly is gravity. We know gravity is, well, usually laws in science are defined in a very specific way. It's like something that is so common and so repeatable in so many different circumstances that it just becomes baseline reality and graduates to the level of a law. So if I drop things, they fall. Just like no matter where I am, if I drop something near a gravitational body, it will fall toward the gravitational body.
Okay, exactly. So, you have gravity, right? And so gravity, the law of gravity, and I'll sum it up here, is shit falls down, right?
Yeah.
I can add some extra context to that. It's like, specifically when you are in a gravitational field, shit falls down. By
like
down,
9 point something feet squared, I think it is technically.
9.8 meters per second squared on the Earth. Shit falls down. Okay, what is down? Well, it falls down the center of the gravity well. So that's what down means, right? Like you can specify this out, and you can declare exactly what you mean by the law of gravity. But for simplicity, shit falls down, right? Now,
But down is relative because shit also falls down in Australia.
Right. Well, that's why I said I specify like towards the center.
Yeah, towards the
well.
center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, great. So this is a law, right? Now, in general, I don't like the idea of having laws in science, period, because like why would you name something a law if all things in science are questionable? This is kind of semantic, but I think that maybe just best practice in science, like from I guess like a pragmatic perspective, is that, well, maybe we just shouldn't call things in science laws. Maybe they're just like neat observations or something. I don't know. Now, there is a distinction between a law and a theory, of course, right? A law is something that has been observed lots and lots and lots and lots of times. It's something that has never been contradicted. It's like, okay, every time that I drop a pen, it falls down. I've never seen a pen fall up, right? And then a theory is the idea behind why that is occurring. So you can have like the Einsteinian theory of gravity, or you can have maybe like a quantum mechanical theory of gravity, or you can have like an Alex Jones theory of gravity, or like my favorite is the flat Earth interpretation or theory of gravity.
Oh God, no.
No, well it's
No.
actually it's where you convert gravity into intelligent falling. All things just fall down, and down is relative to the plane that is the Earth. But okay, fine. So we can agree that this is a law. Okay, fine. But what does this tell us about other laws in science?
It seems that consistency and repeatability seem to be the mainstays of this.
In that case, there are an infinite amount of scientific laws. If we accept that definition of the law, that it's something that we are able to observe time and time again, then there must be an infinite amount of scientific laws, right? Now, let's start with something simple. Let's say that, I don't know, let's see, uranium exists naturally in the Earth's crust, but plutonium doesn't. So uranium is element number 92. Plutonium is element number 94. for the timescales that we're interested in, uranium is the largest naturally occurring element. Once you get past that, it doesn't occur naturally. And by the way, for whatever reason, in the periodic table, even numbered elements tend to be more stable than odd number elements. I don't know enough about chemistry to tell you any piece of why that is. It's just a thing that I know is a pattern. Even things are more stable than odd number things.
And also, another weird thing about the periodic table, if you go down one, right one, and then down one, that's usually the opposite element of where you started from. Like, you could do it with, like, I think carbon and cyanide.
I'm gonna press F to doubt on that one. But so if there are so we've established that there are infinite there are scientific laws, fine, but my position is that there are infinite scientific laws, right? So here's the thing, right? Here is a law that I could propose prior to the 20th century. I could measure all of the atoms that I possibly could measure on the Earth, and I could say that none of them were plutonium. Ergo, there are no. The law that I have constructed is that there are no plutonium atoms. There are no atoms with 94 protons. Those do not exist. Well, that is up until a black swan event occurs, and then in the 20th century, suddenly you have manufacturing of plutonium, right? Now, I don't have to just do this with plutonium. I could do this with element 95, 96, 97, go all the way up to unobtainium, unobtainium, element fucking 120, element 1020, element 1,000,000,020. I could do that infinitely. I could say that based off of all of the data that we have, these elements cannot exist in nature, and so I could interpret this as being a law in science. I could also say that it is a law in science that there is no teacup orbiting the sun. Well, yeah, I could easily say that it's never been observed, right? Because what is the law of gravity? It's that it has always been observed that things fall down. So I could say it has always been observed that there is not a teacup orbiting the sun. That it has always been observed that there is no plutonium atom. It has always been observed that there is no element 1 billion. It has always been observed that there is no such thing as an invisible pony. Right?
So you're getting into this problem where there's a divergent infinity of laws, which in an ultimate sense kind of renders them useless through that logic.
Exactly, yeah. So in that case, what I would say is, what is the point of a scientific law? If it can go on to that level of infinity, at that point, it's almost meaningless. It's like it's a series of things that we can continue to knock down. Like, oh, okay, like the law is that plutonium doesn't exist in nature until we make it. At that point, we knock down that law. But science still has an infinite number of laws that it is still attempting to knock down. And so why, in that case, do we have a scientific law to begin with? Right? That seems absurd given the definition of a scientific law. I say, you know what? Maybe we just, like, I understand that we need to have a distinction between maybe something that has been observed a lot and like the theory behind the thing that has been observed a lot. So I'm not saying that we need to make laws theories. I'm just saying I think that this seems to need work. Maybe we need to come up with a different term. Maybe we specify that like I don't even know how to fix this, because if I were to get into like how to like reform the idea of a scientific law, I think that actually would lead into its own wasp's nest of issues. So like for now, I'm gonna do some thinking about this, and I'm not gonna go too deep. But what I'm saying is that the concept of scientific laws, no matter how you break it down, I don't think that it makes any fucking sense to have them. Mathematical laws, I accept, 100% fine. You want to call those laws? Cool, whatever. Not science laws.
I could also say it's a law that Earth is the only planet where humans are found.
That would be another law, yeah, and it would take a black swan event to disprove that, as with an infinite number of laws. Yeah.
I'd have to look throughout the entire universe and be like, wait a minute, there's actually this ancient colony of humans on some distant planet. I wonder how they got there.
And again, right? This is all based off of the definition of the law. It's always been observed that shit falls down. I mean, okay. You can introduce like the concept of a balloon, right? A balloon doesn't fall down, but we can understand why it is that a balloon doesn't fall down, and that it's actually still the result of shit falling down. It's that the balloon is less dense than the air around it. Ergo, it's not the balloon rising; it's actually the air falling down. The air falls down, the balloon rises as a result. It still proves the theory, not the theory of gravity, the law of gravity, that shit falls down. It's all the same thing. There are some nuances, but it always predicts the same thing. But I'm just saying, what if there was a black swan event tomorrow and you let go of your pen and it fell up? Well, shit. Now it's not a law anymore. Now that's highly improbabilistic, right? Like, I'm pretty sure that gravity seems to be a thing about the universe. I'm just saying that when it comes to this highly axiomatic structure that we built called science, that is itself standing on a number of giant philosophical beliefs, maybe, just maybe, this thing that we've constructed, it's sort of like, it's almost like you built a building, and then that building was pretty strong, so you built another building on top of it. And then on top of that building, you decided to build like this tower called science. And it's like, hey, you know what? When you're standing on that much shit, maybe you shouldn't be referring to the things that you've discovered as laws. It seems a little bit presumptuous of you, and perhaps even a little bit arrogant.
Like I mentioned from the onset, the concept of law, like I remember Alan Watts talked about this a long time ago. The concepts of laws are taken from like the pre-rational, like religious age, and they were kind of adopted by the Enlightenment scientific age just for pragmatic use values. But the type of problem you're bringing up is, I think, a rather serious criticism that bears some careful consideration on exactly how we define these things.
Yeah, and by the way, I say this as someone who is scientifically trained, right? Like I'm not trying to, like, I appreciate science, right? Like I think that science is I mean, just imagine me doing a soy boy face and I'm going, science is cool, right? Like I do like science. It's just that there are flaws, I believe, in the system. And in order to make it better, we have to address these. And that's the spirit of science, right? Science is never correct. It is always a thing that builds on top of itself and must always be corrected, right? Science is never, like, up until like 5 years ago, science was meant to be fallible, and now it's suddenly infallible, and I hate it. But like,
yeah, that infallibility, that is a Platonic transcendental concept. That's why law is like borrowed from the age of divinities and like creatures of omnipotence that are all powerful that dictate these things from an absolute position of metaphysical authority. So if you're just a human with fallible senses, it's kind of extremely presumptuous on your case. Well, my senses have only ever observed this. Well, define your senses. Like, how accurate are your senses in this to say that something of like absolute precedence that's foundational to absolute reality? How much can you actually tell me about that? If you admit from the onset that your human senses are flawed from the beginning.
Right, exactly. So let's see. With this, I think that what we can do is we can try to close this episode out because I think that we we went through some like cool stuff.
Yeah, by the way, I actually had an argument with someone on the politics server that was like one of those soy face epic science people, and I was just like, okay, so you trust the science, am I correct? He was like, yes, okay. That means that you necessarily have some type of insight into the truth behind science, correct? And then he got kind of waffly. It's just like, wait a minute, I don't like where this is going. And I was like, okay, if I dig up a random scientific study, and it's from an actual scientist, and it is a peer-reviewed article, can you tell me why it is true or untrue? And then he just kind of scratched his head for a moment and was like, I see your point.
Sorry, I'm just trying to log into. I'm trying to log into Chat GTP 3 at the second. We need to create a title.
How you know? That's how you know it's like all argument from authority, and it's emotionally based bullshit with a lot of these people anyway. If you can't tell me why this thing is true, like, what the fuck are you even doing? Are you just literally telling me this because, like, Neil deGrasse Tyson said so? Like, I would actually respect you more if you just said Neil deGrasse Tyson said so, and I believe that he is a person of power and influence that I ought listen to. That's like a qualified ought statement. It's basically a moral claim. It's not a claim that you know how to do this or could produce these results from scratch.
Okay, so as our final thing for this video, we need to come up with a name for this. Now, Breaker, what did we go through on this video? I think we went through domestication, some philosophy of science, and what was the first thing that we went through?
The evolution, like bacteria are smarter than people.
Right. Okay. So, what do we put into Chat GPT to make a clickbait YouTube title that we can then use? Right. I've been doing this. Like the last 5 videos have been, their titles have been based off of Chat GPT, and I accept the all-encompassing godlike intelligence of Chat GPT. It knows how to make a good clickbait title. So what do we input?
Wherefore cometh the law. It's probably going to think that I'm talking about actual laws and lawyers and shit, but we'll see what happens.
Okay, let's try this one. Create a clickbait YouTube title for going against scientific laws. Scientists shocked as amateur researcher defies laws of physics in groundbreaking experiment. Okay, that's not quite true.
God. That's a bit much.
Yeah.
The sensationalism is like oozing from every pore of it. It's a bit much.
What if I just said more literal?
That might help.
Watch me break the laws of science in this jaw-dropping experiment.
Well, it wasn't so much an experiment. It was like a thought, like a philosophical dialectic. It wasn't really.
It was a thought experiment.
Technically, yes, I guess.
Okay. What if
something about it rubs me the wrong way?
What if we took that and we just said, watch me break the laws of science in this theory, in this idea. Watch me break the laws of science in this idea. Would that be good?
We didn't so much break any laws as we're just like questioning and criticizing the very concept of the laws. Like we didn't create an anti-gravity device that floats in defiance of gravity.
Okay, I typed in specifically questioning scientific laws, period. Are scientific laws really set in stone? Watch me challenge them in this controversial experiment. Okay, we're on the right path here.
I really like that.
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's pretty close to good. Let me. I'll just type in.
It's getting in the right direction.
I typed in, but I didn't do an experiment. It was philosophy. Okay, so it says, philosophy or science. Watch as I question the very foundation of scientific laws in this thought-provoking video. Holy shit, dude!
That's exactly right.
Look at that.
That's exactly right. Well, there's the title. The AI gods have spoken.
There it is. All right, yeah, that's the title of this YouTube video, and
that's literally exactly what we did. It's not even so much clickbaity as it's like an apt description of what we really did.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I hate it, right? Like I would have said like if I were to make the title of the video, I probably would have gone with on the philosophy of science, like very broad, very boring. But Chat GTP 3, man, it's clutch. It's the MVP. It knows how to turn shit into making it exciting. It's beautiful. I love it so much.
It was very thought-provoking, and we did challenge scientific laws, so it's literally just a matter-of-fact description of what we really did.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not wrong. It's kind of boisterous. It's not the sort of thing that I would usually like I would never make this
it's
title.
A bit arrogant. It's a bit arrogant. It's like it's not even like a bit arrogant. It's like really on the nose, almost comedically arrogant. But you know, it kind of fits.
Yeah, no, that's going to be the title of this YouTube video, I guess.
Yeah, I like it.
I mean, I do want to point this out, right? This is something that I said to you, Breaker, before we started the show, but there's something about, like, I could learn how to make clickbait titles. I could do that, and I don't think it would be that hard. I've learned harder things before. But I don't want to. In fact, I almost have like an ethical like reason as to why I don't want to do that. And the reason is because if I start exercising brain power in my own head to try to please the YouTube algorithm, then I feel as though I'm being controlled by a machine. And that is 1,000,000% the last thing that I want. So, if instead I can get a machine to appease the machine, I have way less issue with that, right? It's a matter of principle. I will not be controlled by an algorithm. So this is actually great. I love Chat GTP 3 for this because it deals with the algorithm instead of me having to submit to the algorithm and devote brain space towards serving an AI overlord. Even though I do already partially serve an AI overlord, and I can't escape it. I want to minimize. No, sorry. I want to minimize the amount that I have to serve the AI overlord. So, that's my thinking here. That's why I use Chat the Chat GTP 3 to come up with the titles. It's it's not so much that, I mean, it's a little bit cheeky, right? But it's a matter of principles. I will not submit to the fucking YouTube algorithm, or at least I will try to submit as the least that I possibly can, because fuck you, AI. So that's why we use the system, and yeah, there's my explanation in case anyone was wondering.
You know who is really good at this from a more human-centric perspective? Beast. Well, yeah, but also I was thinking someone we both know and enjoy a bit is like Papa JF or he's actually like extremely like surgically precise when it comes to clickbait titles. Like one time, I remember an episode a long time ago where this guy would just say, "Okay, make me a clickbait article headline, and all you have to work with is the moon." And JF just lowered his head, like, "Okay, let me think a moment. Scientists take photograph of the moon, and you will not believe what they found." Like within a few seconds, he came up with that instant
Oh, that's
clickbait
pretty
title.
good. Yo, that's really good,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. Wow. Shit. Maybe we maybe we could hire JF to write our clickbait titles. He might do a better job
Actually,
than
yes,
ChatGPT 3.
JF, like, I'm not even kidding. JF actually takes like commission work for like writing and papers and translations and stuff. So you could actually pay him like a marginal amount of money to just like write up a title for you, and it would be coming from an actual human.
I mean that shit, man. I bet he'd do a good job. That dude is like next level smart. I bet he'd do a good job. Uh, but with that, I think that brings the end to the show. If you like what we're doing, remember to leave a like and a subscribe. You know, all the YouTube things that one can do to, if you know, to promote the channel. If you like what we're doing, you know, if you don't like what we're
And
doing,
be sure to ring that bell so that you can be notified of a video, and you'll remember to leave a scathingly negative comment about how full of shit we are.
exactly, yeah. If you don't like what we're doing, then you can go ahead and call us a couple of pseudo scholars. And I think that's great. Just leave more of those as well. Those are fantastic. Leave any comment that you want. It's totally chill. Call us.
Very vague in general. This isn't a specific incident that happened by any means. No, that's not what this is.
No, I think it's lovely. Leave any comment that you want. Call me the F word for the gay person that I can't use on YouTube. Say whatever you want. I don't give a shit. But with that, thanks for listening, everyone, and peace out.
Yay.